For over a century, scientists believed the Amazon rainforest could never support a large civilization.
For decades, archaeologists believed the Amazon was too harsh to support large civilizations. But every new excavation tells a different story.
Then, in 2015, a single aircraft flew over the Upano Valley in Ecuador, carrying a technology that fires millions of laser pulses per second toward the ground. And when the data came back, something impossible appeared on the screen. Beneath what looked like untouched jungle, roads, plazas, thousands of ancient structures, an entire interconnected urban network hidden in plain sight for over 2,000 years. In January 2024, the results were published in the journal Science. Everything archaeology thought it knew about the Amazon had to be reconsidered. January 2024, Science Journal, Upano Valley, Ecuador. To understand why this discovery was so shocking, you need to understand what scientists believed before it. For most of the 20th century, the dominant view in archaeology was simple. The Amazon rainforest could not support large, complex civilizations. The reasoning seemed logical. The natural soil of the Amazon basin is nutrient poor, unusually thin and acidic, washed out by centuries of heavy rain. Poor soil means poor agriculture. Poor agriculture means small, scattered tribes. That was the assumption. It was also wrong. What researchers missed was a substance called terra preta, Amazonian dark earth. Unlike normal rainforest soil, terra preta is extraordinarily fertile. It contains charcoal, organic waste, pottery fragments, and ash, evidence of deliberate long-term human modification of the ground. Some terra preta deposits are over 2,000 years old and still fertile today. Terra preta, Amazonian dark earth, still fertile after 2,000 years. Terra preta was not an accident. It was engineering. And it was the first clue that the people who lived here were doing something far more sophisticated than surviving in a jungle. They were reshaping it. Around 500 BC, a civilization now known as the Upano culture was building in the valley of eastern Ecuador, in the upper reaches of the Amazon basin. They didn't build with stone like the Egyptians. They didn't carve temples into cliffsides like the Maya. They built with earth, raised platforms, engineered roads, agricultural terraces, structures perfectly adapted to a rainforest environment, and for that reason, almost completely invisible to later observers. At the civilization's peak, between roughly 1 AD and 300 AD, researchers believe somewhere between 10,000 and 30,000 people lived across this network of settlements. Estimated population, 10,000 to 30,000. Occupation, approximately 500 BC to AD, 300 to 600. Their roads were not simple paths. Some measured 10 meters wide, wider than many modern city streets, and stretched for 20 kilometers or more across the valley, connecting settlement to settlement in remarkably straight lines. That kind of infrastructure doesn't happen by accident. It requires planning, organized labor, and long-term coordination. Each major settlement followed a repeating pattern: residential platforms arranged around central plazas, ceremonial spaces at the center, agricultural fields at the edges. LiDAR identified more than 6,000 of these earthen platforms across the survey area, with later analyses reporting over 7,000. And here is the detail that genuinely changes how we think about this place. The Amazon these people lived in was not wild, it was managed. They planted useful tree species in high concentrations. They engineered drainage systems. They modified the forest around them over centuries, creating what researchers now describe as a cultural landscape, a rainforest shaped by human hands. 6,000 plus earthen platforms identified, roads up to 10 meters wide, 20 plus kilometers long. The question is obvious. How did this stay hidden for 2,000 years? The answer is the same reason it was finally found: the trees. From the air, the Amazon looks like an endless green carpet. Satellites photograph the tops of trees. Traditional aerial cameras do the same. Below that canopy, at ground level, the roads and platforms of the Upano civilization had been sitting undisturbed, covered in centuries of vegetation. LiDAR, light detection and ranging, changed everything. An aircraft mounted with LiDAR equipment fires millions of laser pulses per second toward the ground. Some of those pulses pass through gaps in the forest canopy and bounce back from the ground surface below. A computer combines the returns into a precise three-dimensional map of the terrain, with the trees digitally removed. When researchers flew LiDAR over approximately 300 square kilometers of the Upano Valley in 2015, what appeared on screen was extraordinary. The dense jungle dissolved away, and beneath it, for the first time in 2 millennia, the outlines of an entire ancient civilization became visible. 15 major settlements, 5 very large urban centers, thousands of platforms, a road network connecting them all. Stephen Rostaing, the French archaeologist who led the research, had been working in this valley since the 1990s. Even he didn't know the full scale of what was there until the LiDAR data came back. The paper published in Science in January 2024 described it as one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in Amazonian history. Not because it found something that had never existed, but because it proved something that had been dismissed for over a century, that the Amazon did support complex urban civilization and that we simply hadn't been able to see it. No conversation about the Amazon is complete without the question everyone eventually asks: El Dorado. For centuries, European explorers scoured the Amazon searching for a city of pure gold, a legendary kingdom described in Spanish colonial accounts. Expedition after expedition entered the jungle. None ever found it. Here is what actually happened. El Dorado, the Gilded Man, was originally a story about a Muisca ruler in what is now Colombia, who reportedly covered himself in gold dust during religious ceremonies. European explorers heard this story, exaggerated it through decades of retelling, and eventually transformed a ceremonial ritual into a mythological city of gold. There is no verified archaeological evidence for a literal city made of gold. But when Stephen Rostaing described the Upano discovery, he used a phrase worth noting. He called it an El Dorado for archaeology, not because it was a city of gold, but because it was an extraordinary find that transformed our understanding of everything that came before. The explorers were looking for gold. What was actually buried in the Amazon was arguably more valuable, proof that an entire chapter of human history had been hiding beneath the trees. Around 300 to 600 AD, the major settlements of the Upano Valley were abandoned. Why? This is where the certainty ends. Researchers have proposed several explanations, and none has been confirmed. The most frequently cited possibility is volcanic activity, specifically nearby Sangay volcano, which is one of the most active volcanoes in South America. A major eruption could have disrupted agriculture and forced communities to relocate, but the evidence is mixed, and this theory alone doesn't fully account for what happened. Climate change, flooding, soil exhaustion, political collapse, and shifting settlement patterns have all been suggested. What's most likely is a combination, a series of pressures accumulating over generations until the settlements became unsustainable. Abandonment, add 300 to 600. Reason, still unknown. Multiple theories under investigation. There is also an important nuance. The people didn't simply vanish. The Huapala culture occupied parts of the same region afterward, suggesting continuity. Communities may have migrated rather than disappeared entirely. Then, 1,000 years later, European colonization brought diseases, violence, and forced labor that devastated indigenous populations across the Amazon. Fields became overgrown, roads disappeared under vegetation. Within a few generations, the jungle reclaimed what had taken centuries to build. Not destroyed by time, hidden by it. The Upano discovery is not just a story about one civilization in one valley in Ecuador. It is evidence of a pattern that archaeologists now believe extends across the entire Amazon basin, one that is only beginning to be uncovered. The same LiDAR technology that found the Upano settlements has since been applied to other parts of the Amazon. In Bolivia, researchers mapped the Cazarabe civilization, another massive urban network, completely invisible before laser surveys. In Brazil, thousands of earthwork structures have been identified. In the Xingu region, ancient road systems and villages are slowly emerging from the data. Each new survey reveals the same pattern, far more than anyone expected. The Amazon basin covers approximately 7 million square kilometers, spanning 9 countries. Of that area, only a tiny fraction has been surveyed using LiDAR. The rest remains unmapped, unsurveyed, and unknown. Amazon basin, 7 million square kilometers. LiDAR surveyed so far, a fraction of 1%. Researchers believe that what has been found so far is not the exception. It is the beginning. For centuries, explorers entered the Amazon looking for gold and found nothing. Modern science entered the same jungle with lasers and found something that no amount of gold could match. Proof that one of the world's largest rainforests was not a wilderness. It was a home, shaped, engineered, and lived in by millions of people whose cities disappeared not because they failed, but because the jungle was so good at keeping secrets. And here is the thing that should genuinely stay with you. What was found in the Upano Valley, over 7,000 structures, 15 settlements, roads stretching for kilometers, was discovered in a survey covering roughly 300 square kilometers. The Amazon covers 7 million. No one knows what the rest is hiding. If that question doesn't let you sleep tonight, subscribe to Vantage Relic.